Hello everybody. In this episode we're gonna take the front knuckle out of my 1974 Trans Am, and then I'm gonna take out the shock and the coil spring out. What we're doing overall is replacing the factory disc brakes with C6 Corvette Z51 brakes, 13.4-inch rotors front, 13-inch rotors in the back with 2-piston calipers in the front and single piston caliper in the back. In order to make it fit for my application, I decided to go with the CPP C5 knuckles. Instead of modifying the factory units, I decided to go aftermarket. I didn't want to damage the factory originals. And then these take the C7 Corvette hubs. So once we take, I've also got all new upper lower ball joints, steering arm components, tie rod ends and stuff from Pro Touring F Body, along with their GT Pro suspension, which I'm gonna swap in front and rear, and also the chassis stiffening kit. And we'll deal with that in different episodes, but for today I'm just gonna take out the knuckle. I've already loosened out and taken out the castle nut on the tie rod end, and also let me turn the light on. Here, the lower ball joint, I've taken the castle nut and the upper ball joint. Amazing enough, on the upper ball joint, as I was loosening it up, you can see here the ball joint was already separating. On the other side, which I did the other day, that thing was caked on and it didn't want to come out at all. I spent about 3 hours of trying to hammer it with the ball joint separator. Nothing worked. And then a friend of mine said, just take a sledgehammer to the knuckle and pound it. And sure enough, a couple of pounds, and that thing came right apart. But this one looks like it's coming out all by its own. So I'm gonna take out the tie rod end first. I'm gonna give it a couple of whacks. If that doesn't come out, I'm just gonna use the separator. Since we're gonna run new parts, doesn't matter whether the ball joint is damaged or not. So I'm gonna film some of it, and most of it just taking it apart with a hammer. I might show a couple of scenes there, but I'll show you when the unit comes out. And then the other thing I'm gonna do is, once the knuckle comes out, everything I swap in, I'm gonna compare weights from the original to the new ones to see if there's any weight savings along with the improvements in braking. If not, then I'll gain the performance of the newer brakes, probably about 40 years worth of brake advancement, brake technology advancement. Also, since we're gonna use 13.5-inch front and 13-inch rotors, obviously the factory 15-inch rims are not gonna fit. Here they are, the old honeycombs. And I've ordered a set of 18-inch US mags. I think they're called the Rambler wheels. And those are 18 by 8 in the front and 18 by 9.5 in the back. And those clear. The only thing I have to do is on the Corvette calipers, which are there, I just painted them with the caliper paint. I gotta grind the logo off because that was just barely touching the wheel. So I'm gonna do that, and then when the tires come in and they're mounted, everything should clear, and it should be way better than the factory. So I'll catch up with you. So, here's what I'm trying to do, just get the ball joint out, hammer it down, a little bit of there, like this, just pounding at it here and there until it comes out. Also put the nut back on backwards, upside down, where the castle is pointing downwards, and I just banged on it. And it looks like it just separated. So I'm just gonna take the nut out. It's a 3/4. There's that ball joint. On the upper ball joint, it just keeps separating on its own. So I'm just gonna back out the nut, and it looks like it's gonna pop out. Once that pops out, I've already loosened the lower nut and just kept it on, just in case something happens that will stop things from going all over. But once I take out the upper one, I'm gonna do the lower one and should come out. Hopefully this will be easier than the other side. The upper one just popped off all by itself. So now I'm just gonna concentrate on the lower one, and the knuckle should be out. So the lower one is in there, and I put the fork in. Just bang the fork in a little bit. It's not budging. So I'm gonna spend some time hammering at it. It will come out. So I sprayed some blaster on it, PB blaster, on the lower ball joint where it goes into the knuckle. I'm gonna let it sit. I know that's not the correct thing to do, but I've always good luck with the PB blaster. I'm just gonna let it sit. While it's sitting, I'm gonna take the upper ball joint out. On the factory originals, I believe they're riveted in, but since this was replaced, it's an aftermarket unit. It's 4 bolts here, and the other side, when I did it yesterday, it was an 11mm head. So just gonna have my 11mm wrench and socket and take the ball joint out, and by that time hopefully PB blaster will soak into the lower ball joint and hopefully it'll come out a little easier. So I'm just taking out the nuts and bolts for the ball joint. There are 4 of them. Like I said, they're looks like they're 11mm, and every aftermarket is different, but these ones look like they're 11s. Just comes out like this. You need 4 of them, and after you take out the 4 nuts and bolts, everything just pops right out. Since we're gonna put new ball joints, it doesn't matter what condition they are, they're done. There it is, a few whacks with the hammer, and the control arm is out. I mean, the knuckle is out. You gotta really hit it. I used to be afraid I was gonna damage something and it wasn't budging, so a few good, really serious whacks, and it comes out. Now I'm gonna take the knuckle and weigh it on the scale. I just put the 17.2 pounds. So now this is the CPP knuckle. Just gonna put it on the scale and see what we get. So this is 11.2 pounds. But just to make things fair, I put the C7 hub on it, on the C5 spindle, and I'm gonna weigh it that way, see what we get. 20.2 pounds. So with the C5 knuckle and the C7 hub, it's 20.2 pounds, which is 3 pounds heavier than the factory knuckle. Next, I'm gonna take the stabilizer bar end link. That way I can drop the lower control arm and get the shock and spring out. I'm going to tie the spring up to the frame so it doesn't fly out on me. But it's basically for the stabilizer bar end link. It's just 9/16 in the bottom and 9/16 at the top. And I'm just going to take it out. Be a little careful. Taking the stabilizer bar end link. Just 9/16 at the bottom, 9/16 at the bottom. The sway bar end link is out. I'll just have it here for now, place to rest. Next, I'm gonna take the top of the shock out. Take that nut out. It's double knotted, so I'll take the other one and then I'll go underneath and take the bottom two shock mounts out so I can take the shock out. Here's the shock out. I had installed a set of front and back Coney Reds about 22 years ago when we did the front end, and the top is double knotted and it needs the impact driver to take out the nuts. And the bottom, where if you're lucky you'd still have the factory nut certs there, so all you have to do is undo the bottom, the bolt. It's a 1/2 inch. For some reason mine, the one side, both sides actually, one nut had the factory insert in and the other one was nut and bolted, so it was a pain to take it out, but it's out. Now the last thing left is the spring. I have my jack underneath it. I'm gonna slowly lower it now. It's still not gonna come out. I'm gonna put something underneath it because the car is too low. I gotta jack it up at the frame, tie the spring to either the frame or a lower control arm so it won't go flying, and then let it come down little by little, take the spring out. And I just took out the shock and the spring, and the driver's side front end is completely apart. I'm gonna start cleaning it up as soon as the parts come in, start reassembly. Thank you very much for watching.